and welcome. Tonight we are talking about Beachin good books and what to take on vacation, what to read, and particularly if you like romance and some nice escapist mindset, vacation wherever you are, we've got it for you tonight. But first, we're going to let all of our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Gallo. I write mostly romance. I actually write fantasy under Andrew Q. Gordon, which might be more escapism than romance. I don't know.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kay Evan Coles. I write mostly romance as well. I'm dabbling a little bit in the paranormal romance right now. So that's exciting because I've been wanting to do that for a while.
And Kindle. Oops, we can't hear you, Kindle.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes. Right before all this started, my computer just kind of blinked and then everything was gone that I had set up. And it was, yeah. I'm Kindle Alexander and I write male contemporary romance.
And Xio.
Hi, I'm Xio Axelrod and I write different flavors of contemporary romance, including MF, a lot of music romance, and yeah, glad to be here.
Violet.
Hi, I'm Violet, and I write romantic paranormal mystery, romantic women's fiction, and romantic suspense. So.
And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, and more. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. So, what's your idea of a great vacation book type of read? What do you like to read when you're on vacation? Okay.
Oh, I like to read something that's going to really hold my attention. So sometimes that means it's a really long book, or maybe it's a series of books. But I like to if I have time, I want to dive in and read as much as possible. You know, burn the midnight oil. So anything that's really going to hold my attention and that I can get into and really get comfortable.
Okay. Kindle?
My favorite beach read. You ask the hard-hitting questions. I like a good long book that has meaning and I can just lose myself in it for several days. You know, a sizable book. I love those kind of books. And the last beach read that I read was Nicole Edwards' first paranormal book. Has anybody read that? It was so long, and I was with people that were reading it, and it was it just added to the experience of being on that beach.
How about you, Xio?
I'm the same as Kay. I like really immersive experiences. Either I binge a series because I like to sit on the beach and just watch the ocean, or I get something really meaty and long. And I listen to audio when I'm at the beach. So if I can get like a really good book, really amazing narrator or narrators, like I'm set. You know, that's just like me for the rest of the week.
How about you, Violet?
If I am at the beach or by the pool, then I want something that's more lighthearted and something that doesn't require all of my attention, because I feel like I'm kind of like, distracted by people around me or distracted by what's going on. I may be hot and not wanting to concentrate. So if I'm at the beach or the pool, I want something that's more lighthearted or something that's more humorous. If I'm on a trip where I've got a lot of travel, I need to be occupied on a plane or a train or something like that, then I definitely, like everyone else said, I want something that's very complex and very long and very heavy, so that I'm really can just get lost in that world and forget that I'm traveling, or forget how many hours I have ahead of me, so that I'm looking at the hours ahead of me as a benefit for time to read, rather than, oh my God, we're not going to be there for 8 more hours. So I like the time in that respect.
Oh, look, my plane is delayed. I can read more.
Exactly. When there was a book, and I don't remember what it is now, but I know there was a book that came out the day we were flying somewhere, and I literally bought it in the airplane store. I knew it was coming out, and as soon as we got to the airport, I bought it. And we got delayed taking off, and we sat on the tarmac for like an hour, and all of my family was grumbling. And I'm just like in the book, like, this is an extra hour I get to read. So I was excited.
Yeah, if I'm reading at the beach, I will be the person huddled under the beach umbrella in the deepest shade because they don't make sunscreen strong enough for me. But having said that, I like to look at the ocean. I like to get in the ocean. I just burn. So I will be huddled in the shade reading the fluffiest fluff that I can find, that is so far removed from anything in the real world, that has everybody ending up happy, even if there's all kinds of adventure and danger and angst in the middle, has to be super happy at the end. And I just want to, I take the escape part of escapism really seriously, and I just want to be elsewhere because that's what vacation is for. So I leave the heavy reading for other times, but vacation is time to just chill for me. How about you, Andy?
See, you all don't have the same problem. So I got to have things that are light and fluffy. They can't be too erotic because, men's bathing suits and the beach and the kids. I got to, so I'm generally, if I'm at the beach or someplace like that, I'm going with like a fantasy or something that's just not gonna embarrass me and my family in front of, and you laugh and you think I'm kidding, but it's happened. And I can remember being on the train going back from work one day and reading somebody's book, and I'm like, whoa, I had to shut that, put my bag down over my lap. So yeah, I go for like the light, the fluffy, or the science fiction kind of stuff that's really family safe. Dead bodies are great. Dead bodies, capitations, all that stuff. That's good. Just
No problem with that. The dead bodies, no reaction.
Correct.
That's funny. You guys are funny.
Oh, that is. Well, what if, let's just get it out there. What books have you written that, given all those definitions of what a beach read would be, can you see someone toting off to the beach with them? Kindle?
Well, mine is the Nice Guys series. It starts out in Hawaii and kind of ends in Hawaii through the 3 books. And now I just want to write the scene that Andy talked about. Like, how is that not in a Mel book that I've read, that you cannot be doing those things on the beach in front of other people?
Xio?
Well, I wouldn't have called it a beach read, except that magazines keep calling it a beach read, and that's The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes, my latest. I think maybe it's because it's such an epic journey for this woman in the band, and there's music and there's all this, the high stakes and everything, and it's really immersive. So I think that maybe that's why people are gravitating toward it. It's funny because I've been getting all these photographs, like people have been taking shots of the book in airport stores, which is a first for me. So, and it says like fly away with a good book, or like, whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like people are picking up my book at the airport and reading it on the plane or taking it on vacation. Like that is such a huge milestone for me. But yeah, so it seems like that's
so nice.
Isn't that cool?
So nice.
It's
I
so
love that.
nice.
I didn't even know
love
that was
too.
happening.
I was celebrating over here for you. That's so exciting.
Thanks.
Violet?
I have a romantic women's fiction series that kind of borders on romantic comedy. It's my Tales Behind the Veil series. So it starts with Diary of a Single Wedding Planner. And that book, the very first book in the series, she's a wedding planner who has grown up believing in the fairy tale, and that someday she would meet this guy and know immediately that he was the one. And in real life, it just hasn't happened. And she's surrounded, by love and romance every day, but she's also surrounded by crazy brides. And I was a wedding planner for a number of years and have little like experiences throughout that time that I was like, oh my gosh, this has to go in a book someday. And that book actually starts with a scene where the wedding planner has been tasked with helping the bride, whose fingernails are wet, put on her pantyhose. And it's hilarious story about this wedding planner on her knees trying to put on someone else's support pantyhose and questioning her life decisions that have brought her to this point. And it just kind of like starts off the book with a laugh and starts it off lighthearted. And so I've been told by several people that it's a great beach read or a great pool read, other than the fact that you're sitting there laughing out loud and other people are staring at you like, why are you sitting there laughing? So that's a good one for the beach or the pool.
I've got 2 series that are set in beach locations. Badlands. The Badlands series is set in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina. And then the Treasure Trail series is set in Cape May, New Jersey. two very, very different beaches, very different beach cultures. So that's always fun because they're two of my favorite places to go. So I get to kind of mentally revisit them when I write the next book in the series. So those I recommend. Now they hit Andy's measurement of dead bodies because they are they're romantic suspense, and they've got they're detective murder mystery, but they've also got sexy times. So maybe not so much unless you've got board shorts on or something, because I don't cover. We do get there. So, but lots of dead bodies. How about you, Andy?
Let's see. So what have I written? I would say that probably the thing I would probably read, since we're keeping with the family safe, would be the fantasy series I wrote as Andrew Q. Gordon, which was this one. This is book one of it. I think when I last checked, it was 3,600 Kindle pages. So, I mean, I would think it would take somebody at least a good day to read some of the books and maybe the whole week to read the whole thing. For me, I like it's the series that kind of pulls you in, and it's one of those things that you can't read book 7 or book 5 in this case before you read 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you really, if you want to know how it ends, you got to go through the whole journey. Otherwise you'll be like, what's going on here? So for something along like that, for a long beach read that is family friendly safe, that would probably be what it is, what I would suggest you go with.
Okay. Okay.
So I was just thinking, if I wanted to read something long, immersive, a series, I would probably go with the first books that I wrote, actually, with a friend of mine, Brigham Vaughn. We wrote 6 books, and it's over 500,000 pages total, which kind of blew my mind when we published the last one. I was like, that's a lot of words. I'm not sure I'll ever do that again, which is a lie. I will. But I think I would go with that. It's Wake and Calm are the first 2, and then it's followed up by an offshoot series called The Speakeasy, and it follows a group of friends, like found family, and their adventures in New York. It was a lot of fun to write, actually. I really enjoyed the co-writing process, and I really fell in love with the characters. So I would read them again, actually, just as a regular person myself.
So, Xio, what kind of stuff do you like to do on vacation? If you're going on vacation, what really makes you happy to do when you're on vacation? Where do you like to go?
Are we talking beach or just in general?
In general. I
mean, I do love the beach. We try to go at least every year, once a year, to a beach somewhere, and I like staring at the ocean. I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Like, I don't like getting in the ocean really, because I'm like super unstable on my feet. When the waves are like pushing you around, I'm like that person that'll fall over. But I do love just the tranquility of the ocean. But like, we just went to Vermont. We spent a week in Vermont over Memorial Day week. And just drove around some really pretty scenic drives up there, did some whiskey tasting, tasted some cider. Like I live on my stomach. Like when I travel, especially when I was touring in Europe, I always stayed in places like, if my band was playing in different places in the country, we would park ourselves in like the biggest city so that we have all kinds of like culinary experiences and stuff. So I love eating like a local. So that's a big thing for me. But yeah, I love, exploring new cities or just sitting at the beach and staring at the ocean for hours and listening to a book or an album or something.
How about you, Kindle?
I have to agree with what she just said. Like, my stomach is very much the guide to where I go. My taste buds, I really love to go places that have really good food, but I just honestly really like to go. I like to see people and learn the way they live and learn how they live their day-to-day life. I like all of that, but food, I can tell you everywhere I've been based on a good meal that I had there. I like that a lot. And I like to just go. I do like to go.
It's fun to like find the local specialty, right?
Right.
Yeah. Especially if you're in the same place for like a long period of time. Like, okay, so they say they have the best pizza and they say they have the best pizza. So I'm going to do that taste comparison.
So then you're going to decide who has the best pizza. Yes, that's, you and I need to go someplace together.
Yeah,
I bet we could eat really well together. Our thing is crab cakes. We like to go.
Ask the hotel concierge where they would go.
Mm-hmm.
We have found some of the best restaurants that way, because sometimes they send you to this place that's like down an alley.
Yeah.
Just the food good.
Okay, but before we go further, it's in Orlando. I said Orlando, in Georgia, in Atlanta, that has the very best restaurant we have ever eaten at. And we also went back there just to eat there. And it was still the very best restaurant that we've ever been to. Can I say the name of it?
Yep.
You better.
Okay.
Yes.
Violet, are you listening? Because I want you to go there and tell me if it's still good. It's Poor Calvin's. And I don't know the layout of Atlanta very well, but there was a peach tree.
There's like a
Everything's
million peach tree, but
Okay.
poor Calvin's.
Poor Calvin's. And I had they're one of the, I wrote about them a couple of times in books. That's how good they were. They have this infused thing going on. And the food was that good. The food was that good that I flew back there just to go to that restaurant. Isn't that funny?
I believe I want to write a book set in New Orleans just so I can go there to do some research. Like, you know, like
We did that same thing too. Yes.
Research is very important.
It's very important. Right. And then we write about it all in the books. Our books are very food oriented. You know, we talk about it.
Yeah.
My editor is really food oriented. And if I try to get away with just saying, they had a conversation over dinner, I get all these notes on what did they eat? What did they have with it? What were the side dishes? Did they have dessert? Because if I don't give her all the foodie details, she drags it out of me. So I have learned.
That's the way I feel too. And Cafe du Monde in New Orleans. I mean, that was the first thing that came to mind. My mouth started watering about those beignets.
Yeah.
I'll go with you to New Orleans too.
Okay.
I'll meet you there.
Sounds
I'll
good.
meet y'all anywhere y'all want to
Let's
go.
go.
I'm there.
Do not go to New Orleans on a diet. It just
No, it doesn't exist there. You can't. Yeah, I don't believe in traveling and anywhere and being on a diet. Like if you're going to go somewhere, enjoy what they have to offer.
And you diet after.
Yeah, there are no calories on vacation.
Right.
Just walk around, burn off the food by walking
Exactly.
around.
Yeah.
Y'all are my
No
people. Yeah.
So Andy, how about you?
Wow, I am like the outlier again. I am not a foodie one lick.
Oh my gosh.
I could live on pizza and takeout all day. I mean, I know it's terrible. And I'm the cook in the house. I'm the one who has to cook. My husband, on the other hand, he is a total foodie, so he is dragging me to places. For me, it really depends. Like when I was younger, I grew up at the beach. Like I lived on Long Island and I grew up at the beach. And for me, like I hated the beach until in my 20s because I was like, oh, I did this all the time. And so then I wanted to go hiking. I wanted to go to the mountains. I wanted to go skiing, stuff like that. And then I got older and I missed the beach. And so I have a 9-year-old and we have taken her to the beach, I think, since she's been 1. And we don't go to the beach, she gets upset. So now I'm back to the beach again. And I don't know which one, somebody said something about listening to the waves. I mean, that for me was like a real go-to when I was a kid. We literally could walk down to the beach at some points. And so now I hate sand. I just hate it. I will say that. And I'm not really fond of salt water. It just kind of makes you smell bad. And it just tastes bad. And I always get a mouthful. But sitting there listening to the waves, that's cool. And like, just as a real quick story, when our daughter was born, we had a surrogate out in California, and my sister lives on Coronado. If any of you have ever been to San Diego, it's just an amazing place. So my parents, now they own a condo there, but they rented a condo just so that we could stay in the area because you can't fly with an infant until they're like a week old and they get cleared by the doctor. So my parents rented this condo so that we could stay with them. And for the first 7 days of her life, I heard the ocean every morning. I woke up to it. I would just sleep with it. And she just thinks it's like, oh, let's go to grandma's. You know, it's like, it's the greatest thing ever. Like, you have no clue how privileged you are to do this. And she just thinks it's like normal.
You know, the book that I'm writing right now is based out of Coronado. I don't know how I didn't figure that out. That is truly the best part of this country. I love that area.
How about you, Violet?
I just love to travel anywhere, anytime. You say go and I'm packed, I'm ready, and I've probably already done research on the place to figure out all the best restaurants and what the walking tours are and, what are the off the beaten path places that we need to check out. So I love to travel. If I'm looking for like history and architecture and things like that. I like going to Europe. If I'm looking for relaxation, I love anywhere in the Caribbean. Usually if our kids are with us, we're going somewhere where we can either have hiking or something to do with wildlife. So, you know, mountains or something like that. But always food. And it's a huge deal to us to figure out where the best local restaurants are. We have a rule that, like, if we pull up to a place and there's no one eating there, we don't go there. And if we pull up to a place and no one's speaking either the native language there or the native accent there, we don't go there. Like if we go and everyone talks like us and we're not here, then we don't go in that restaurant. So so yeah, very much depends on what we're looking for. The last big vacation that we did go to England right before the pandemic, right before the plague. What, I forgot what we're supposed to call it.
Pandemic's okay.
Current unpleasantness is my
Before
favorite.
the world started turning in a different direction completely, we were in England. Like literally, we landed 2 days before the flights coming into the country stopped. But prior to that, we had taken a trip to Scotland, and it was amazing. I would go back in a heartbeat. The scenery was incredible. The people were incredible. The music was incredible. I didn't like the food. So it's funny because that's probably one of the places that I loved, and I would go back in a heartbeat, but I didn't like the food. Like I tried everything. I tried the haggis. I tried the Scotch eggs. I tried the blood pudding. Yeah, so I wasn't a fan, but yeah. So normally I'm all about the food, but Scotland, I'm all about the view, the landscape, the people, and the music. So there you go.
My family still hasn't forgiven me for finding out where the most authentic Scottish restaurant was in Edinburgh and taking them there. I'm loving it. It's good haggis and great Scotch, and they haven't forgiven me yet.
It's funny because anytime we travel to England, I find the best Indian restaurants, the best.
Oh.
You know, like it's funny because I never eat. I love the Brits, but their particular cuisine is not my favorite. So
But you can get amazing.
You could fry up in the morning. What?
right.
Black pudding, mushrooms, beans. No.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to Scotland in May next year, and I'm so deeply disappointed now. I don't know how am I going to get
it. You may like it, Kindle.
I love the food though.
I am, and this is where I'm going to be the outlier, Andy. I'm not a meat and potatoes girl at all. I don't care for mashed potatoes. I don't care for baked potatoes. I don't care for meatloaf. I don't care for roast chicken. Like I'm like,
Oh yeah. Okay.
I love Thai food. I love Indian food. I love Mexican food. I love Italian food. but like just that, like I'm from the South originally. I'm from Mississippi, and I hate Southern cooking. So like any kind of like just meat, potatoes, vegetables, count me out. And unfortunately, a lot of the British and Scottish food is meat, potato, vegetables. So you may love it. My husband loved it. He was fine. I just was like, I think I ate cheeseburgers the whole time I was there because everything on the menu was like shepherd's pie. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are their peas? The
Mushy peas.
Mushy peas.
Yeah.
No. Like you know
Fish
what I
and
mean?
chips, all that stuff. We
Yeah.
drove to Glasgow, and we stopped at the travel services, on the road. One of the very last ones when you are crossing the border from England to Scotland is really beautiful, like rustic. I'm like, this is a travel service. It's like here they're like gas stations with like Roy Rogers attached to them, and it was like they had a farm to table like cafeteria in there, and we're browsing in there. There's nobody in there. We walk out, and the McDonald's next door had a line that you wouldn't believe. And I was like, you've got all this fresh, organic, like farm to table food, and you guys are going to McDonald's from McHaggis. It was so bizarre.
Well,
And
I
like
will
fried
say,
Snickers bars.
We went to this little harbor town called Oban, which if you go to Scotland, I definitely recommend that you go there.
Good
And
Scotch.
it's right off the coast of Oban are the islands of Ione and Skye and Mull, and they're not Skye, Ione and Mull, and we were coming off the ferry at the harbor, and there's literally like a tent kind of set up, like a pavilion that we would see here at like an arts and craft festival, like a little food tent. and it had every kind of fresh seafood you could imagine. Like literally the boat is right across the sidewalk, pulling it out of the nets, and they're putting it under this food tent. And we got the most amazing shrimp and the most amazing. I mean, it was so funny. I told my husband, there's no way. I don't think there's anywhere in the United States that I would walk up to like a tent on a dock and just buy fresh seafood. But there were so many people there. This place was so crowded. We waited in line forever to get this little, cup of fresh shrimp. But it was so good. Really, really good seafood.
Kay, how about you?
I'm very hungry. I just wanted to say that.
I know, I'm like, I didn't
talking
dinner
about
yet.
food. So actually, yes, when I travel, so I'm an extrovert and I love to be around people and I love cities. So even though I also have trouble relaxing. So even though I might be on vacation, I'm usually like, where should we go? What should we see? So I do like to visit cities, especially cities I've never been to. And I like all of the foods that Violet mentioned. So I will eat almost anything. But that makes, I think, for a lot of fun stories too. I love food trucks. I love street food. So I like to put all of that kind of stuff in my book. And I do think that it's a really great way, when you're eating in a city that you're visiting, or even just a small town, you're really getting to know the people and the culture as well as you can, which is fun. Even if you're like, what am I eating? I don't even know what this is. I've done that so many times. I'm like, what is this? I don't know what this is. If I die, please tell my family I loved them.
It's a way to have a shared experience. You know what I mean? Because like when you're eating things, even if it's a similar dish, but it's prepared a different way because you're someplace else, that's a way to connect with someone of like, oh, we eat it this way, you eat it that way, So I love like the conversations that come up when you're eating someplace else and you can share that connection of food.
Yeah. It's a very common kind of thing, like everybody eats. So if you go to a town and you've never met these people, you don't even really know their language. If you're eating from the same sort of like plate or food, you're making a connection. And I think that's a really good point.
I love finding the dishes that are similar in different places too. Like you mentioned the black pudding in England, in the UK, they have something similar in Portugal, blood pudding. They, like you go different places, they call it something different. Everyone has a cream puff. Everyone has an egg custard tart. Everyone, you know what I mean? And the wine.
Everyone has a dumpling.
Everyone has a dumpling, but, and also wine and spirits. I'm a big wine person. So like I always try the reds wherever I go anywhere, and you get that terroir, you get like what the culture through the liquid, you know what I mean? Like you figure out what they like and what they celebrate there. And it's really cool. And I like writing that into the books too. Like my characters tend to have a favorite food or scotch or whatever it is.
One of the best travel meals that I ever had, my friend Janice and I were traveling in Tuscany, and we had hired a guide for the day because we wanted to go off the tourist path and see things. And he took us, lunch was included in our tour, but we didn't know anything about where. And he took us, we pulled up to, he told us at one point it had been a castle, but at some point hundreds of years ago, its tower was knocked down. So now it's just a village like within the walls. There's only, I think he said 27 people that live there. And there was no sign. There was nothing that indicated this was a restaurant. We pull up, we park, and we go around the building. And there were like 6 tables set on this back lawn under a humongous tree with just the hills of Tuscany rolling out in front of you, like something on a postcard. And we sat down. There were no menus. This lady came. She introduced herself as Mama Gina. She spoke very, very little English. And luckily our guide, was fluent in Italian. And for the next 2.5 hours, Gina just brought out food. And I have no idea what most of it was, but we ate it. It was all incredible. I honestly think I was all 10 toes were filled by the end. My stomach was just overflowed, but you couldn't stop. And I don't even like tiramisu. And I was so full, and she brought it out, and I said, I can't eat another bite. And she just kind of insisted that I taste it. It's the only tiramisu I've ever tasted in my life that I loved. And I think over the course of that, she must have brought out 3 or 4 bottles of Chianti that we just kept drinking. It was the most amazing afternoon and the most amazing meal. And for the most part, I cannot tell you what I ate. Have no idea. Because like I said, there was no menu, and she would tell us whatever it was in Italian. And we were like, all right, well, it tastes good. So it was wonderful, wonderful.
Now, have you ever sent your characters on vacation? Or if you haven't, where would they be likely to go? Andy?
Sorry about that. Does it count that in my fantasy books they went on vacation? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Pretty much like the series I wrote, the MM series I wrote, Harrison Campus, the kids are all on campus. So, I mean, there's really not a whole lot of time for vacation for them. In one of the shorts, I sent them to Europe, I sent them to Switzerland. But in the first book in the Champion of the Gods in my fantasy series, the main characters get in their, what will be in their world, married. And the one main character who's more worldly than the other takes him to this like seaside city, you know, and they go for their honeymoon, so to speak. And so for me, and they went to the beach and to the ocean. So yes, they definitely went to the beach because they lived in the mountainside. So for me, I think if I was going to send characters somewhere, I would probably send them like to Europe. I think as somebody else said, because when I just got out of law school and I went with some friends from my softball team in Philadelphia, and we went to the Netherlands. And I literally spent 3 days because they were boyfriends and then they were fighting and then they were literally picking up other people. And I was just like, I'm staying away. And just walked around all of like Amsterdam. At one point I ended up in the red light district and I had women going like this to me. I'm like, no, how about your brother? And I think one of them actually did point me down that way. And I'm like, I'm just kidding. So for me, I just like looking at old cities. I took 1,000 pictures, but that was back when they didn't have digital cameras. So I don't know how much it cost me to develop the film. And we did the same when we went to Spain. We went to Granada. My sister lived down there when her husband was in the Navy. So for me, I like old. I like visiting old buildings, and you know, I grew up in Philadelphia area, and I grew up in New York, and then in the Philadelphia area, and in Philadelphia, we were old by American standards, 1700s. Wow, and nothing. Like when we went to England, there was Harrod's Wall, which was, I don't even know how old that was. So for me, that's where I would send my characters to go experience the old and to realize, just be humbled by it, because that's how I was.
Philly. Yeah, I live in Philadelphia. I grew up here too. And we have, I think the oldest thing we have in the city is like 1640 something. And most things are like 1700s. So when I moved to England, the first thing I did when I moved to London proper was just walk around all day by myself. And I went to Westminster Abbey and I was alone. There was like a huge line outside. I didn't realize that they were all waiting to get in. So I just sort of like wandered in, and, they have like tombs in the floor, and I'm like trying not to step on them. And they're like, you can walk on them. Like, this is the floor. Like, what are you going to do? And I'm wandering around, and this one clergyman comes over and he's like, oh, are you here by yourself? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, come with me. And I'm thinking, I probably shouldn't do this, but okay. And he took me back to the cloister. And it's just like beautiful, like courtyard. And he was like, it's really quiet here. There's nobody here. Wander around, take a look, And the thing that I loved about that little space was that where the monks' cells were, you could see where the stone had been worn away from their hands turning the knob, or like in the bench, there was like, like the stone benches had like little grooves from people's butts sitting on them. And to me, that was like, oh my God, this is history. Like people have been sitting there for hundreds of years. Like it was so different than being in a modern city like Philadelphia. But yeah,
when I was in Nottingham, I went to a pub called Yield Trip to Jerusalem, and it's the oldest pub in the UK, and it's literally carved into the caves beneath Nottingham Castle. Prince John, Robin Hood, that castle.
Yeah,
and it's been consistently open and serving ale since like 1189. It was the last beer on the way to the Crusades. And
it's amazing. I played in a place.
And we put red velvet ropes around stuff that's 100
right.
years old.
That's 100 years old. I played in a place in the south of Portugal, Setúbal, that was an old convent. And like you walked into the space where the stage was and stuff, and it had like these curved arch brick ceilings. And I was like, wow, this is a really unusual space. Was this like a wine storage place? And I'm like, no, this was part of the place. And I was like, wait, what? It was like 1,000-year-old nunnery that we were playing, our rock band was playing in. But it's just history everywhere. There was one grocery store that was like built into the side of like this 1,000-year-old Roman wall that just happened to be there. And I was like, it's just wild. I love that kind of stuff. So right there with you, Andy.
How about you, Kindle?
What was the question?
Have you sent any of your characters on vacation?
Oh,
if they were going to go, where would they go?
Yes. The one that comes to mind is Forever. It's the Always and Forever duet. And much like she just explained, they went, to Rome, and they went to Italy, and they went to Florence, and they stayed in the hotel or whatever they call it that was built in the 1200s. And they did all of that, but they went to into Rome to the restaurants, and they were in one of the restaurants when they found out that their pregnancy had taken and they were going to be fathers. And it just adds, for me as a reader and a writer, it just adds a depth that you can't really get to unless you've been there and done it. Does that make sense? Or at least I can't, maybe y'all can, but it just adds such a value to be able to talk about the food that they're eating and the noise in the background and the way they're all smashed together. There's no, the waiters have to whine through the tables and stuff. And it's just, yeah, it adds something. Y'all have all said it better than me.
Violet, how about you?
Yes, I have. I've also, because I live in the Central Florida area, we have so many restaurants, and I've sent my characters to some of the locally owned restaurants here and had them have some type of experience if it's a unique restaurant. But I did send one character to Paris, and on one of my trips to Paris, we had found this little market street. And, here in the US, we usually have grocery stores that you go in and it has everything. And this was this delightful little narrow street that had a produce shop, and then a meat shop, and then a fish shop, and then a cheese shop, and then a chocolate shop. And I just I was just in love with wandering in and out of these little shops, except the cheese shop, which smelled like a gem locker. But, all of the others, it was just an amazing experience just to have each of these stores that had their own specialty as far as food. And so my character actually, because of circumstances, her boyfriend missed the flight to Paris, and she ended up in Paris by herself. And so I have her wandering this little market street and picking up things to have a picnic under the Eiffel Tower. And so kind of wandering in and picking up strawberries, and wandering in and picking up, chocolate, and picking up cheese and a bottle of wine. And so I loved that, because exactly what Kendall said, I feel like if it's someplace that I've been and I've seen it, I've heard it, I've smelled it, I've walked it, I really do think you can lend more authenticity. And obviously we can look up places. I mean, the internet is a wonderful gift for us as writers, and being able to look something up and see what the streets actually look like. And you can even, talk to people that are in that area. But there's something about walking it yourself and then writing that to see the same place through a character's eyes that I really enjoy.
Okay, how about you?
Okay, so this is hilarious, to me at least. So I told you I have trouble relaxing, right? I'm realizing that I don't send my characters on vacation so they don't relax either, which is clearly this is a problem. I did send characters on vacation in 2 books, and they went camping, which I don't do. So I have some things that I need to flesh out, but I agree with what you all have been saying about making connections to the places that you're sending your characters to. Because I do think that, we just talked about connections through food. And it's the same when you're actually traveling to a place, and you can really speak to how that place made you feel, and then, infuse your character with that as well. So I'm keeping a list of things that I need to do. And one of them is send characters on vacation. Thank you all very much.
I write in a shared universe for holiday anthologies where it's a fictional castle in England, but there are anywhere from 4 to 7 writers who are writing, and we do different holidays. The first was Christmas, and then trick or treat, and then the next one is New Year's Eve. And so I send a different couple from one of my series or another on vacation there. And the first couple that went were Tegan Anthony from the Deadly Curiosity series, and I mentioned that they were going to take this vacation in the previous book, so it kind of set up the story in the anthology. And then the next couple were from Treasure Trail, and one of them had traveled extensively, and the other one had really never been out of New Jersey. And so it was kind of fun to see the world through their eyes. And of course, they run into dead bodies and mysteries to solve and all that. But writing the castle that doesn't exist with several other authors means that we have to coordinate really closely, or else, you know, people are climbing staircases that somebody else says aren't there. And the biggest thing for the Christmas one was we all had to agree where the Christmas trees were so that these 30-foot trees weren't moving all over the yard. Oh, look, it was over there yesterday. So it's a lot of fun because it's great to see the world through my character's eyes, but it's also a lot of fun behind the scenes working with the other authors, one of whom lives in England. So she sets us all straight on what we can and can't do. Now we've been sharing all kinds of cool stuff here, but anybody have any particularly funny thing that happened to you on vacation that maybe you'll use in a book someday, or maybe you've already used? Okay.
I'm sitting here thinking about the different times I've gone on vacation. I will say that, so I went to Europe after college with a friend. We lived there and we were working, and she had another friend come in, and we all went sort of like train hopping around different countries together. And then the two of them decided that they would visit a city that I didn't have enough money to go, because I was like completely broke by the time we got to Amsterdam, actually. So I spent 2 days alone in Amsterdam, but I made friends with these two guys from the hostel, and we just like hung out and went to all the different restaurants and things. And we never knew each other's names, and no one sort of figured that out until we were really deep into the 3 days. And then it became very awkward. So we were all just like, hey, how's it going? All the time. We had a good time though. And we really found a lot of fun things to do in Amsterdam. But I feel like maybe that would be a fun story where they don't learn each other's names until the very end. You know what I mean? Or like there's a strange name sort of like thing happening.
Violet?
The first thing that came to mind, the first time my husband and I did a cruise to Mexico, we'd gone on this excursion that day and just took, a limited amount of money and didn't take a whole lot else because we were going to be snorkeling and doing other things in swimsuits. And we ended up, the guy dropped us off in town so we could eat, and we ended up spending the rest of the money. So when it came time to get back to the ship, I think we had like maybe $15 left total. And he kind of made a deal with this guy with a horse and carriage to drive us back. And we get back, and they have all the little ships, the stores right at the port. Like right before you get on the ship, you have to walk through all these stores. And we happened to walk into this jewelry store, and for whatever reason, my husband found this ring that he was determined to buy. He was like, I really want to buy you this ring. And at that point, we had about 35 or 40 minutes to be back on the ship. And he's like, he goes, you can run faster than I can. Why don't you run back to the boat, get my credit card, my driver's license, all that kind of stuff, and bring it back to me. And I'm like, dude, I don't want the ring that bad. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And he's like, no, really, we'll be fine. We have plenty of time. Well, I've just had a belly full of Mexican food, and like one of those like yards of margaritas that they sell in Cozumel. I start running, and within just like a few feet, I have like a stitch in my side that feels like I've been stabbed with a sword. And I am like trying just to make it to the ship. And when I got on, the guy told me, we're getting ready to let up the gangplank. Like you barely made it on. And I'm freaking out because now he's in Mexico with no money, no driver's license, no credit card, nothing. And I know I have to make it back off this ship. Didn't think about the fact that our room was in the very back. So I'm like literally shoving people out of my way. I'm crying. I'm like, any buzz that I had for the margarita is completely gone now. And I'm just like trying to make it back through there. Couldn't get the safe open, couldn't remember the safe code. I finally like get the card. And when I get back to the gangplank, they told me, if you get off, you're not getting back on the ship. Like, that's it. We're closing it. And if you get off at this point, you're in Mexico for the night. And I'm like, I have to. Like, you don't understand. He's stranded. He's standing at the store. And so I get off the boat knowing that we're probably now stuck in Mexico, and I really don't want this ring at this point at all. Well, we weren't married at the time, by the way. And so I run all the way back to the store. I'm so mad at him. I'm cursing. I don't want the ring. I throw his wallet at him like I'm completely done with this whole experience. And he, now that he has his wallet, he has more money, he pays this guy on like a pedicab, like to drive us back to the ship. And luckily, this poor lady had entirely too much alcohol, and she had fallen right at the end of the gangplank. And so security and some kind of medic and somebody else had come down the gangplank, and they were trying to get her up, and they were like seeing to her, and she was bleeding. And that's the only way that we made it back on the boat. And so the next day, I don't think I spoke to him the rest of the night. I was so mad about this whole ordeal. And so the next day he hands me this ring, and he's like, do you think that maybe if one day I ask you to marry me, that maybe you might say yes? And I'm like, what is this, a maybe ring? Like I ran, for 40 minutes for a maybe ring? Are you killing me? But we've been married 15 years, so we survived that. And I think that would be kind of a fun story to put into a book and something that I could do to characters. But, I'm glad I made it back on the ship.
I'm imagining you like sidling past the crime scene that basically happened at the end of the game. Like,
That's exactly it. I literally
That's what I thought too.
asked if she was okay. I think I literally just kind of like hopped over her feet and onto the gangplank and went right on up. Like, here's my ID, let me on. So yeah, I hope she was okay. I don't think she died.
In the book, you'll have to have the character ask a friend to fake an illness at the bottom of the gangplank so that you can like, and then when you get back, they just pop up like, I'm cool. And then you all go back on the ship.
Or maybe as the character is running off the gangplank, she actually bumps into this woman and knocks her down. And then that way, when they come back, the woman's still laying there unconscious or something. So yeah, I'll figure it out.
Andy, how about you?
I don't know that I have really any funny stories other than, like I said, when I was in Amsterdam and I was with two friends and they were fighting. I mean, I will say that probably the funniest thing that ever happened when I was away was when my daughter was born. They told us, oh, she's not going into labor or whatever. So we went out to get something to eat at a Wendy's because I'm a foodie, right? And we go back and he drops me off at the hospital with a surrogate who is a very good friend of ours now. She invited my daughter to be in her wedding this year, so she's just an amazing woman. And I get back and my husband went back to the hotel to get change of clothes because we were going to be staying at the hospital that night. They had a room for us. It was kind of really cool. And they're like, yeah, she's in labor. Where is your husband? I'm like, I didn't want to be in the room for the birth. I'm sorry. I'm squeamish about some things and I didn't need to see it, right? And he wanted to be there, and he's the one driving back to get clothes, and I'm the one standing there. And so he comes back, and I'm trying to get out, and now the doctor's not there because I guess they didn't expect it this quick. And so when the doctor's not there, they had to have like 7 different nurses or something crazy because like what one doctor will do, 4 or 5 or 6 other nurses each of them had one specific role. And I got trapped in the room, and I didn't want to even be there because he went back to get the clothes. So that's about the closest thing I've ever had to like an amusing I'm on vacation story that is safe for this group to talk about.
Did he make it? Did he end up making it back?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
And
so he got
and
to too?
I'm sorry?
He got to be there too?
Yes. And
That
he
would
wanted
be
to be.
kind of ironic if you didn't want to be there and you ended up there and then he missed the whole thing. So I'm glad he made it back.
And that was what we talked about. It was like, I mean, I was literally like, if you picture the hospital room, I was like in this corner, blocked in by like the machine that goes bing and all this other stuff that they had there that they weren't using. And then eventually the doctor gets there in time, but all the stuff's still there. So I'm like trapped in the corner. So it was interesting. I mean, like I said, the whole situation was surreal. I mean, what I really should write in my book is that the attorneys we hired to do this whole process went to jail for baby selling. Yeah. Yes. I mean, yes, they did. I mean, that is, you're laughing.
Twist.
It's not funny when the
not
FBI
funny.
calls.
It's
It's not
not
funny when
funny.
the FBI calls you and says, "We need to talk to you about your lawyer." I'm like, okay. So that's
story
a
took
much
such
better.
a turn, such a
It
left
took
turn.
such a
Oh my
turn.
goodness.
That is a much better story, but just for another time. It's not a beach read.
Criminal Minds, look out.
I know. Oh, that's funny. Sorry, it's not funny.
Kindle, how about you?
Well, I'm still stuck in what he just said. Humor it's such a huge part of my life. It's something that I really strive for. Humor makes everything better. And I write with my best friend. So we have traveled all over the world together, her and I. And so, there's so much that can go wrong, that does go wrong, especially when you're willing to laugh about it, So I was relating to it all. But I think the story that I like the most for me is the time when we were in Rome, and we weren't so much into the food in Italy. It wasn't necessarily our cup of tea. The idea of tuna and spaghetti sauce, it just didn't work for us. So, but one of the things is they do everything tartare. Is that the right way to say it? So everything is raw. And we made a commitment before we ever got on the plane that we were not going to get stuck in a raw situation. We were not going to do it. And so we were out and we had some wine, and you walk everywhere you go. And we were talking, and an owner of one of the restaurants came over and said, "We're going to hook you up." And we were like, "Great, we're going to have some great food." It didn't occur to us to say no raw. And so they were so proud of this food, and they displayed it, and it was so beautiful. And one of the cooks came over, and the waiters came over, and the owner, and it was just a whole situation. And we ended up eating that food because we're Southern women. We can't say no, we're nice to everybody. And so we left, we ate that food, and we left. And I swear it was like a mile walk back to our hotel, and we threw up 5 times on going back to that hotel because we had freaked ourselves out. The food was great, but we had freaked ourselves out. And there's something to be said for being on those small cobblestone streets, having to hold your friend's hair. And it's not at our age, and it's not because of alcohol good time. It's because we had to eat all that raw meat. It was so funny.
Well, Xio, now you've got to follow those.
I was still thinking about the character I sent on vacation because Violet mentioned like going to a place and learning it and then writing into your character. But I wrote my first book, and it was set in Inverness in Scotland, and I'd never been there. So I used Google Earth, and I plotted out walked routes and stuff. So I was like, how far is it from the pub to this hotel and that kind of thing. So, and actually one of the first reviews I got was from a Scottish blogger, and she was like, "I love how you captured my city," and all that stuff. And I can tell you've been here and you fell in love. And I was like, but I think, I don't know, the only funny vacation story I can think of is when I was in high school. We went to an amusement park in Orlando that I won't name. And we were staying at this hotel, and I was bored. I don't know why we were in the hotel this afternoon. Maybe it was hot or rainy, I don't know. But I was bored, and I was just wandering around the lobby. And I always like to strike up conversations with the people who worked in the places that we went to. So I made struck up a friendship with one of the reception people, and she had to run off somewhere, and she was like, "Could you just like give me a yell if somebody comes to the counter?" And I was like, "Well, give me your name tag. I'll be you. And then if they come, I'll just take care of them." And she was like, "Yeah, right." So she gave me her name tag. I still have it. She gave me her name tag, and I got behind the counter, and like I'm checking people in with the person that came next to me. And I'm like, "Welcome to the hotel. Like, how was your trip?" I was like 17. Like, "How was your trip?" And whatever. So for like a couple of hours that day, I was a employee of this big hotel chain.
Well, folks, this has been so much fun, and we have blown through our time. So lightning round, because we only have a few minutes left. Let's go around real quickly and let everybody know if you have a new book coming out and where to find you online. And I'm going to go right back around, starting with Xio.
Well, my book just came out last month, so it's still pretty new. It's The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes. And you can find me everywhere on social media at Xio Axelrod. I am a social media butterfly, so look me up.
Awesome. Thank you. Kindle?
We don't have a new book coming out yet. We're working on Julian's story from Reservations. It's like writing books is like giving birth to us. It takes 9 months, but you can find us anywhere on social media or on Amazon and search us out. We're fun. We like to have a good time.
Awesome. Andy?
So nothing new. Last book that came out was Better to Believe. That was in April. You can find me on social media at andygallo.com or on my reader group, which is Glorious Readers, GALLORIOUS Readers. So that's it.
Nice. Violet?
I am hoping to have a new release out by the end of the summer, but I don't have a date on that yet. My latest release is a book called Whiskey Flight. It's a romantic suspense, and you can find that on my website or on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Nook, anywhere. And you can find me at violethowe.com, or I am on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but more as a voyeur than a participant. So if you want to interact with me, it's Facebook or Instagram.
Nice. Kay?
I am just finishing up a book, actually. I'm hoping to have it out. I'm hoping to have it finished in the next couple of weeks and out by the end of July. And you can find me on kevancoles.com. I like social media. I even Twitter, so I'm friendly, mostly.
And you can find me at gailzmartin.com, morganbrice.com. My reader groups are Shadow Alliance and the Worlds of Morgan Brice. All the rest of the social media is one version or another of those names, but mostly you can find me here on Continual. So thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for a terrific conversation. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There'll be more romance and more vacation reads here on Continual. See you online.